hear me?
Yes.
So I don't think we have, should we get started? Yeah. I don't think we have any specific presentation for this, so I just wanted to kind of leave it open for questions, answers. I just came from the adolescent presentation upstairs. They answered questions well, so that's really nice. They didn't have a lot of questions, but it's always helpful to hear what you all are kind of maybe struggling with or experiencing, and then we can have a discussion from there.
Do you think you could give a really brief summary of what you talked about yesterday for those who weren't here?
Sure.
Like just some 3 key points or
Yeah.
something.
So for those that weren't here, we were mostly talking about something called character strengths. And character strengths are 24 parts of our personality that are positive things in our personality that develop with time, obviously. We have all 24 of them, but what is unique about every person is that they're in a different order. So my top strengths are not the same as anybody else's, and everybody else's top strengths are not the same as anybody else's. So we're similar to others, but then we are also very different in that the order is very different, right? But we can use these character strengths to help us to be more aligned with things in our life, our careers, our relationships, our friendships, everything that we do, even our service. If you're using your talents and character strengths to even apply to service, you will flourish in that service. And so the point of this is to help us to kind of flourish better, to be resilient. And resilience is also a science in and of itself. It's about a 50-year-old science now. And there are many characteristics that fall into that as well. Resilience is a muscle to be built, meaning that it's not something that we just have and then that's it, but it's something that we build with time. The more that we face our challenges rather than hide from them, the more that we grow. Lots of things come with resilience, things like humor, things like identifying where I've been resilient in the past and using that, using our character strengths to help us to grow more, reframing our thinking, using lessons that we've learned throughout life to improve our resilience. Lots of things can be applied to that regard. So using character strengths to flourish and to be more resilient. That's what that's what we talked about yesterday, mostly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would love to hear what your questions are, and we'll try to address them. And oftentimes I find that people have similar issues, so feel free to, open up your questions. I'm sure others will benefit from them as well.
And we're gonna pass the microphone so that we can have the recording.
Who wants to ask a question? Shall I ask you the question that my daughter did?
Sure, that's a good place to start.
Okay. So I have a daughter that has 2 little girls, 4 and 5. And so she sent me say, please ask Christine this
Question?
she said this. Okay, where is it? Sorry. There you go. I have a question. If I encourage one of the girls with her strengths, should I make it equal and say something to the other girl too at the same time, or in different opportunities? Like, should it be equal or at different times so each one feels special?
Yeah, so such a good question, because we have multiple kids often in families, and each one has their own personality and their own benefits and their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and we want to address those things in a unique way for each person. So I was kind of mentioning to Buna a little bit of an answer here, but it's a good place to answer it for everybody else, is that our praise and our identifying of their strengths needs to be unique to them, and also it doesn't have to be at the same time, right? Because you have to pinpoint what is uniquely happening with that child at that time. you never want to paint everybody else with the same paintbrush. So if this one's strength says this, like bravery or courage or creativity, then you can't tell the other one you're brave and courageous and all those things if that's not what is applicable to that situation. Then you're just applying it to everybody across board. You want to look at each child's individual strengths and praise that and encourage that and support that strength. So if this one is creative, talk about her creativity. If this one is brave, talk about her bravery. If this one has a beauty and for appreciation, that we had the 24 strengths before, make sure you're highlighting each person's strengths and then applying that strength to whatever they're doing in their life at the moment. So maybe they're applying it to music, or they're applying it to service at church, or applying it to their friendships, or taking care of their siblings. Whatever they're doing, praise that. You don't have to do it at the same time. Try to be equal, right? So if you give this one 2 praises, give this one 2 praises, but it doesn't have to be at the same time. Because if you're focusing on their individual strengths, then it's unique to them. It can't be glossed over the same across board. Yes.
Thank you.
This is a comment about yesterday for those that weren't here, and then a question just to make sure that I covered it.
Mhm.
But you mentioned that everybody from God is given 24 strengths.
Yes.
Everybody has all 24. And when we think about, well, what's my kid's strength or what's my own strength, sometimes it's like we come up with like 5 or 6,
Mhm.
not the 24. So something you suggested yesterday for those that weren't here was there's a test
Mhm.
that is online, and it's called VIA,
Mhm.
via
Viacharacter.org.
viacharacter.org,
Yeah.
viacharacter.org, where you can go online, and this is what I'm planning to do in my own house, and maybe we could even do it as a church family. I'm gonna print out 5 copies for all 5 of us. We're gonna all take the test, and we're gonna see like where our strengths are, just in case, you know, we're given all 24, but see where our real strengths are. Other than that, is there anything else you suggest? I just want to make sure I'm covering everything, because I thought that was very helpful.
Yes. So yeah, viacharacter.org has been around for about 25 years. They've done lots of studies of, initially this research, if you want to go back, I don't know, several decades, 70, 80 years or so, there was a psychologist who literally sat with the dictionary and took out traits of our personality and found 4,000 adjectives in the regular dictionary, right? I can't imagine us sitting down with a dictionary nowadays and taking out traits. But with time, they have kind of whittled down different personality traits as umbrella traits. And now the character strengths are also considered personality traits. And like Monica's saying, there's 24 of them. And they're all in a different, excuse me, order for each person. And so in knowing what our strengths are, all of them are strengths. So even number 24 all the way at the bottom is considered still a strength. It is a lower strength, but it's not a weakness. All right, so none of these are weaknesses. Let's say again, creativity is number 24 for you. It doesn't mean it's a weakness. It just means that this is not the first tool that you take out of your tool belt when you're trying to figure out what strength to use, right? So you can spend some time bolstering those bottom ones. Maybe go take a pottery class or a painting class, and then you'll increase your creativity, right? And that helps. So those are the things that we need to work on a little bit more. But those top ones are ones that you're using without even realizing it. It just comes so natural to you. It's second nature to you. And it's the first, like if you're kind, you're just going to be kind everywhere. You're going to be, kind with people at the grocery store. You're going to be kind at church. You're going to be kind at work. If that's one of your character strengths, it comes naturally, easily. And so we can use that to say, okay, you're kind everywhere else. That's amazing. I've noticed that you were kind with your siblings today. That's awesome. That makes it increase even more. Okay? And then we'll use it in other areas. I do believe the one online is, it will ask you one question at a time, so I'm just putting that out there. And VIA stands for Values in Action, is what it stands for, because they're values in action. They're in action wherever we go, wherever we are. And then we can use those, interpret which ones are your highest, and applying it to become more resilient. Okay? Basically, that's what I do every day. Yeah.
Can we also have questions that are not necessarily related to the topic?
Yeah,
If you have
please,
any
anything you
question
wish.
at all?
Anything you wish.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, up here?
Maybe it's not.
Would you like to go first?
You go first. No, you go.
Okay, actually, maybe it's not related, I didn't hear
That's
the
fine.
lecture yesterday. Maybe Monica recorded, I'm going to check with her later. Okay, so, if you have kids in the Sunday school, teenagers, and they affected negatively by negative talks from others in the community or in the church.
Yes.
Like I will say, how you reach to their heart whenever they don't look at you or any other servants in the right way. So how you reach out
What do you
to
mean
their
not
heart.
looking at you in the right way? What do you mean?
What I mean was
What do you mean not looking at the servant in the right way?
I'm saying they affected negatively, by the negative talks,
Okay.
negative judgment. So they don't see the picture as it is.
They don't value your opinion.
Yeah,
Right?
they don't value your opinion.
Or
So,
maybe they don't value, they don't value you at all because they lost the confidence.
yeah,
They lost it.
yeah. So it is related to strength, because I think everything is related to strengths and resilience. But let me answer from the perspective of a teenager, first of all. Teenagers, their frontal lobe in their brain, which is the area right behind, kind of the very first front area of the brain right here, isn't fully developed until they're well into their 20s. So this is the executive functioning part of the brain that, it helps you to make decisions, helps you not be impulsive, helps you to think about things clearly and with discernment. All of that is not there yet, right? So adults that have this hopefully fully developed will know to discern, hopefully.
Yeah.
They should have some more discernment about, somebody said this, I can let that go. I don't have to listen to everything somebody says. But for a teenager, and this is really important too, is that teenagers literally have something called the spotlight effect. They feel that there's a spotlight on them. Everybody's watching everything I'm doing and scrutinizing me. So when somebody says something negative, it's a huge deal, right? Adults, again, may not take it as hard because we've learned to filter what is true from what is not. And teenagers also don't know themselves well enough yet. So that is all something in the process. So helping them to explaining that to them, that we don't have to listen to everything that everybody's saying about us, and that will help them to find their own identity as they grow and as they develop. And it's not necessarily what people are saying. But if they don't respect adults, that's an issue that we definitely need to kind of address. And if they're not respecting adults, we want to understand why, what's behind that, first of all. But always reminding them again of their strengths and not just listening to what other people are saying, but to rely on their strengths. But respect is something that is important, but it's a two-way street. This is where we sometimes don't understand. We expect teens to respect us, but we also have to respect them back. We have to give them room to speak, room to explain themselves. It may take them a minute, because again, it's not fully formed yet for them to formulate their opinions and their ideas and all those things. So put all of that together, and this is how we should deal with that teenager, that respect is a two-way street. I'll respect you, you respect me, and then I want to hear what you have to say, and I want to see you from your perspective, and then relate to them their strengths and have communication in that way.
Do you encourage personal communication or group?
It could be grouped to be more general, all right, but then you can take that individual person out, take them for a coffee or something like that. They like boba, all the kids like the boba, right? Take them for boba, and that way you can bond with them one-on-one as well. Find something that they like to do. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I do have a question. Can you suggest or recommend, I don't want to say like 3 books, but what books did you feel like really every person should be reading? It doesn't have to be a parent. I love parenting books, but we have younger people too. Like, if you could read this in your lifetime, whether it was based on your talks or not,
Yeah.
what are the books that you recommend?
So Man's Search for Meaning, I mentioned that one yesterday with the adults, one of the greatest books I've ever read. It truly influenced my career. in the area of resilience and meaning and purpose and all those things. That was by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. He lost his entire life in the Holocaust. He lost his family, he was a psychiatrist, he lost his psychiatry work, had to immigrate, had to leave, lost everything, right? And started over. And his big theory is called logotherapy, which talks a lot about how meaning gets us through difficulties and challenges. So Man's Search for Meaning is a book about meaning, basically, and its importance for our survival. A book by Dr. Henry Cloud is on boundaries, an important book as well. We need, bless you, we need boundaries with everyone we interact with. Sometimes we lack boundaries, even in people in our families, even with our kids. But there are certain lines that should not be crossed, especially if something hurts us in particular, and then somebody continues to use what is hurting us or what has hurt us in the past to hurt us again. So boundaries are a very important thing. I think that book is incredibly important. And I'll have to think of a third one, but maybe something on the love languages and relationships. Anything by the Gottmans is really good as well for couples. That's really, really good as well because they talk, we can have that as another day. But they actually have a concept called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Sounds like Revelations, right? About 4 things that break up relationships, usually.
What's the name again?
The book, the authors are the Gottmans. Yeah, the Gottmans. It's a husband and wife team. They've done tens of thousands of couples worth of research over their career. So anything by the Gottmans, I would say. Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to think of how to, make this a little more succinct, but what I'm trying to ask is, when you think about strength, especially as a man, I think a lot of times strength is seen as standing up for what you believe in, seeing things as a test of faith and standing firm in the Word of God, that type of stuff. But there's also a lot of strength in absorbing things and being vulnerable, and sometimes when you try to stand firm, you end up kind of pushing people the opposite direction. The prodigal son is a biblical example, letting them, take your inheritance and go figure it out for yourself. And when you finally get to that point, if you do, hopefully, when you come back, we're going to celebrate that you learned from that, and we're not going to hold you. Yeah, shame. Yeah, because shame is kind of the ultimate joy killer. So I guess I'm trying to turn it into a question, but I'm just, how do you know when it's the right thing to do to stand firm and to hold your ground, and when it's best to kind of just, let people figure stuff out for themselves, or maybe it's even both trajectories have pros and cons, and there is no one answer that's going to figure everything out. You kind of just, maybe the truth is that whichever path you choose, the second guessing and not being assured in your choice, constantly going, well, maybe I should have been more lenient, or you were too lenient, or maybe I should put my foot down. Maybe it's not about one or the other in every situation. Maybe it's more about just kind of picking one and sticking to it.
Yeah, so again, discernment, I think, is something that grows with time. That wisdom is one of so the 24 strengths falls under 6 categories, and each of the 6 categories have a bunch of the strengths underneath them, and it's not even. So some have 5, some have 4, some have 3. But one of the top categories is wisdom. So it's something that we need to grow in wisdom and discernment, and that's even a Christian principle, right? We want to be wise in discernment as we grow and things like that. So as long as you are, praying about big decisions and things like that and waiting for that discernment and God to kind of guide in that direction, then you're doing that. But sometimes we're not going to make the right decisions, right? And that's where that redemption comes in. In dealing with other people, you want to have boundaries, but you also want to be kind. Just because you're kind, I think about the wise as serpents and as simple as doves. You're both. You're as humble and simple as a dove, but you also are wise as a serpent. You have to be discerning and wise about things. So in some situations, we do have to be more lax and more This person is growing, this person's starting to learn, especially if it's a teenager, let's say, and they make a mistake. Again, their brain's not fully developed, they're not making wise decisions, so it's my job to guide them. But if it's an adult, my job is to iron sharpening iron, right? And to tell you, I don't think that what you're doing is correct, but it's up to them then to take that and do something with that information. It is different when it's a child because we are their proxy. We're supposed to tell them what to do and guide them in the right way. And even then, they can put their foot down and say, I'm not doing that, right? And so, be kind at times, but be wise as serpents as well. There's times where you have to put your foot down and put boundaries, and other times where you have to be more gentle and kind about things. And Christ had both. In the temple, he came, angry and with whips, and then other times he was writing in the sand, this person is, who's without sin, cast the first stone, right? So he had both also. We have to be wise in discerning which path to take. Yeah, good question. Other questions?
I'm still awake.
I was just gonna echo Josiah's question, because I struggle with that as well. And the way I would phrase it is, where does God's sovereignty end, and where does my action start? Like, and do these things overlap? Are my decisions and choices so important that I really need to have so much, great discernment, or should I also, or do I leave everything in God's hands? Kind of those two things are, to me, there's some tension there.
Yeah.
But I think your point about prayer and kind of abiding and just doing what we can,
Yes.
and just using the discernment that we have, but also through a lot of prayers and abiding in Christ, we kind of allow Him to help us through the discernment, decision making, but also resting in comfort, resting that we don't control everything. God is in control ultimately. So that should take away some of that anxiety, maybe a little bit from that, like everything is not going to hang on what I'm doing necessarily.
Yeah.
At the end of the
And
day.
I like that last point especially, is that no matter, even if I mess up in my decision making, God is still sovereign, right? And I will mess up because I'm not God and I'm not perfect and I'm gonna make mistakes. No matter how hard I try to make the right decisions, sometimes it's not that clear cut. And so it is important to know that at the end of the day, even when I mess up, God is still sovereign and He's still in control, and He's going to, fix all those mistakes, which is why all things work together for good for those who love God and called according to His purpose in Romans 8. Very, very important there to try our best to do the best, but knowing that He's still in control at the end of the day. And we will make mistakes, unfortunately, from time to time.
Very important principle.
Yeah.
How can we hold our peace? Like, we can be afraid always to make mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna be able to act at all if I'm just afraid to make a mistake, right? And I think of the story of, St. Peter being told to put the nets back out again. And he's like, I've done that already. Why am I there's no point. He said, just do it. When he did, he reaped a lot out of that situation because he was obedient and he listened and he made an action. So we have to take a step. And if we mess up, it'll be corrected at some point in some way.
A question, do you have a study list of scriptures broken down into maybe some categories that we could go through and understand and get into our being? Do you have a list like that?
I don't have a list, but I often put verses in my slides depending on, whatever the talks are, but maybe I should compile a list. That's a great idea, actually.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. For the next visit, maybe I'll have a list.
Yes, the next bit. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying that.
yeah. Right behind you.
So, how do you pick up on subtle hints that people have about stuff? I'm better direct. People tell me direct stuff, but people don't operate that way. So how do you pick up on stuff like that?
We all are on a, level. Some people are higher on some things and some people are lower on some things, and that's, again, not necessarily a weakness. There's other strengths that could, do the same kind of thing. So maybe if you are not clear about what somebody means, you can ask a direct question, and then when you ask that direct question, they, can help you understand. Thank you. But maybe, or even if it's not a direct question, you can ask a question about what's being addressed, and it can give you some more answers about what you're trying to get at in that regard. But we all have different levels on these things, so it's perfectly okay. Yes?
I have a question about parenting adolescents. How do you balance, there's different philosophies I feel among parents, of course, but how do you balance providing freedom and a space for your adolescent to make the right choices, but also providing protection in a world that is very hostile towards faith and Christianity? So I don't know, in your work, have you come across any secret sauce that has really allowed for some of the best outcomes?
Yeah, I wish there was a secret sauce, but basically these things are developed with time. Trust is something that is growing with time. So you give a little bit, and then if they can be trusted with that, you can give a little bit more. If they've been trusted with that, you can give a little bit more, and it keeps increasing in that regard. It's also important, age appropriately, to have open discussions with your kids about the things that you're worried about, because if you don't, they're going to find it anyway and find it from somewhere else, and it won't be near our values, right? So it's important to have discussions about these things, about the things that you're worried about. When I talk to teens, I use the imagery of an ocean, right? You take a day on the beach with your family, you can have a picnic on the beach, it's all lovely, you go swimming for a bit, come back in. But if you go in too deep, you start to get into trouble. It's the same beach, but you've just gone in too deep, right? So we want to use that kind of idea that it's not all bad. There's many useful tools on the internet that we can use, but we have to be wise and discerning, again, about what we do. And your job is to create the framework of what they're not allowed to cross, right? And not allowed to kind of leave these parameters. And you do that at the beach, and we do that everywhere else that we go. You give them a little bit of room, but you also say these are the parameters. And help guide them through the decisions, make it a safe place to come and talk to you so they can ask questions when they encounter things that are not good. And they'll know with time. They'll come say things to you that, this person did this, it wasn't really that appropriate, I left that situation, which is hopefully where we want to go. Yeah.
What would you, in your experience, what would you say has been the biggest threat for the well-being of a child that has grown into their adulthood? With what might have impacted them the most, in their growing up stage, that might have impacted them?
I mean, there's a variety of things, and everybody's different in that regard. But relationships are a very, very big thing. Friendships, relationships, people are injuring other people with their words, with their actions, with things like that. That can certainly be hurtful. And so to check in on those types of things. The other big danger nowadays is the way people are using some of the technology, AI and things like that. They're using it as their therapist. That should never be okay. And we've seen some pretty bad results of that. So, and that research and stuff is still so new because the technology is so new and expanding so rapidly. So be careful what they're doing online. I would highly recommend that. Put limitations on their phones, have regular conversations all the time. And we could have, enough talks about that. But when we talk about, I would say things that are most concerning, it would be relationships that injure, people that hurt each other. Because that can linger for a long time. Other
The issue is,
Here you go, here's the mic, here's the mic.
the issue is, it's sometimes, it is easy when we say it, but when we do it, it's hard. Like right now, for limitation for internet or the phone, how are we gonna take the phone away from 11th grader or 12th graders and the phone in their hand, like, I mean 48/24.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so, and they use it for everything.
they do, they do.
Yeah, I'm not talking about only my kids, I'm talking in general, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Because again, you know, by the way, like, you know, I'm a life coach.
Okay.
I'm dealing with a lot of cases, not really a lot, but from my point of experience, it is sometimes easy to say, but till you reach the point you wanted to achieve it, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It takes a lot from you.
Yeah, it does, but that's why you have to have open conversations. And, you know, there's research that is coming out about this, I highly recommend looking into the research, but, there has to be limitations, there has to be self-control. Again, we're in Lent, this is a good time for self-control, not just from food, but from things like social media and AI and all this other stuff. But this is a lesson to be learned over time. It's not just taking it away and that's it, right? It's about explaining why that's so important and continuing to have open conversations about that.
There's a question.
You said something about iron sharpening iron, like
Yep.
how we can edify our friends. How can you edify your friends without coming across as like rude or criticizing?
Yeah, good question.
So because we all want to hear the question.
How can you help edify your friends without coming across as rude or criticizing?
Believe it or not, tone, volume, body language, all those things have a lot to do with it. You can come at it from a soft perspective and say that you value your friendship a lot. And that's why you want to make sure that they're doing the best that they can. So you start off with something soft and gentle like that. And then you say, but I've noticed a couple of things. This is not to, you know, criticize you in any way or put you down in any way. I just want to see us to blossom as friends and to see you blossom as much as you can. And that you went to these talks on character strengths and you see their strengths, but that you're trying to build them up. And that's why we say there's constructive criticism, not criticism that will break you down and cut you up and make you feel terrible about yourself. That's not the kind of criticism we ever want to give as a Christian, right? Our criticism is meant to lift and build and fortify and strengthen and lead somebody to God, right? So as long as it's done gently, volume, tone, attitude, all of those things, that will help a tremendous way. Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
So apart from your work as a professor, I understand you're also a therapist and a counselor. So my question was, well, I have two parts. Firstly, how should one approach therapy? Is it something that you seek as a service once for, let's say, something difficult that you're going through? Or is it something that someone should be utilizing throughout their life continuously? And is there any point that you like graduate from therapy where you've accomplished it and you know you don't require it anymore? So how should one approach that? And then on the other side, spirituality and religion and faith can play a big role on mental health. And what resources would you recommend for finding not only a good fit, which is already hard enough, but someone who also is able to incorporate your faith into how they can help?
Yeah, great question. Yes, there's unfortunately still stigma out there with mental health and therapy, but it's improved a lot in the 25 years that I've been in the field. So I'm seeing more and more people talking about it commonplace, which is a really good thing. And it is important to seek out a good fit, like you were saying. So, you know, there's lots of Christian counselors that are out there that can help in particular, that will match your values and match your perspectives and things like that. But yes, it's not something that you will maybe do permanently, but during pockets of your life, we see people during times of transition, during times where they're struggling with relationships or something like that, you will see people come in. But we see people across the spectrum from they're doing fine and they just need some tools, right? Just like you go to the doctor on a maintenance once a year for your well visit, that even if you're feeling okay, and sometimes you go to the doctor if you're feeling really, really crummy, right? And so this is the same kind of idea. You can enter at any time in those things, but even when you're coming in with some real struggles, hopefully if it's the right fit, you will find an empathetic ear and a place to land that will give you tools. It's an objective person, so they're outside of the problem. They're not inside of the problem, so they'll be more objective. They'll be able to see your blind spots, maybe other family members' blind spots. Sometimes we can even bring other family members in on a temporary basis to help your particular therapy. So that will work sometimes as well also. But their purpose is to be non-judgmental, to be, again, an outside objective source, and to be a soft place to land if there isn't a soft place to land elsewhere. And then people leave sometimes when things get better, and that's what we want. We want you to fly on your own. We want to give you a basket of tools to use, and then you fly on your own. And then if there's another speed bump on the road, come back. And our doors are always open for that as well. And so it's not meant to be, a permanent thing. We do want you to be independent and to grow and to flourish and all those things, but the door's always open to come back when needed. I hope that helps. Yes.
Do you have a follow-up?
Follow-up? Okay.
Sorry, just quickly, thank you so much for your response. And do you think there's a difference in the efficacy between virtual therapy versus in person? Because I know in this day of technology, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, great question as well. So people have been doing virtual for a very long time, but it has increased a lot since COVID. I remember, in fact, the practice that I was working at the time, literally, I think COVID was like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. By that following Monday, we had switched to virtual. So it happened all very quickly. We had to get a lot of training on virtual and ethics and all that. And now it's stabilized. So it's very much the same, as people doing things in person, because we've adjusted to that change. It's comfortable for the clients because they're doing it where they're comfortable if they need that. But I also would caution on, don't do it at a train station or a bus station or something like that, or on an airplane. Because you still want the privacy of that situation. Don't do it in a cafe or a Starbucks or something like that. So still do it in a private place. But we're now trained on, everybody is kind of trained on how to do this a little bit better than we did 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and it's much more commonplace nowadays. Yeah. But some people still prefer in person, and some people do want the comfort of their own kitchen, their own, house, their own things like that. Yeah.
And would you also make a recommendation for a Christian counselor over a secular or purely secular type of counseling?
So it's a good question, and yes and no. So a secular counselor is supposed to still respect your profession and your values and your ideas and your thoughts, and they're not going to come in general, not tell you what to do, right? They're going to guide you through the process, hear your struggles, and they're supposed to respect your faith. But if you want somebody to understand your faith and how much of the value that is to you, and then maybe someone that's Christian like you will be of better response in that regard. But regardless of who you go to, they're supposed to respect your faith and respect and even utilize your faith to help you to grow.
How would you overcome hurt or forgive? Because you mentioned that you would hardly, it's not easy to forget, but we are called to forgive.
Yes.
Even if there is still residues of hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's lots of research on this by somebody named Dr. Everett Worthington. I've worked with him in the past. He's a wonderful psychologist and researcher in the area of forgiveness. And his research comes from a personal place where he went through a tremendous tragedy that is very hard to forgive. And so he did a lot of research psychologically on forgiveness to figure out a way on how to forgive. Because it's hard to forgive. And it's hard to forget. It's actually impossible to forget unless, God forbid, we have a traumatic brain injury or dementia or something that would make us forget. Hopefully, God forbid, that doesn't happen. So in that case, we are called to forgive again and again and again and again. And this is about giving that bitterness and that feeling of hurt and that pain to God, and that let God carry that, and then you are going to not necessarily let that person back in. This is where boundaries are important, especially if it's a very deep hurt. You're not going to automatically just let that person in. There's got to be some mediation between that person and the person that's been hurt. So you're not going to automatically let them in. But forgiveness is about between you and letting go of that pain to God, so God can heal your heart, and it opens up a place of changing hearts for the other person, praying for the other person that God changes their heart. Only God can change hearts, right? But it's about me not being consumed by bitterness. That's the ultimate point of forgiveness. So it's not about ignoring that this happened. It's okay that this happened. It may even be that I need to confront this person and say, this was not right what you did. But even still, I'm going to let go of the bitterness that I feel. I don't want that to consume me. That's the point of forgiveness. It's not about the other person as much. It's about me letting go of bitterness and trying to put one foot in front of the other to rebuild my life or my whatever has hurt me. And as I do that, that will help me to recover, but it doesn't mean that what happened is okay. That's the point I want to be clear about. It doesn't mean that it's okay. It means I'm letting God handle it, and I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and move forward. And we know that God is a just God. He will deal with it on His way, and He will work on the heart of that person, hopefully. But bitterness is not good, right? Because bitterness will physically and mentally affect you. Yes. Back there.
Along those lines, what's your take on giving yourself space between you and that person just for like your peace?
Yes.
Because some would say as Christians we have to love that other person, but even if they are a friend, do you feel like we still have to keep that person in our close orbit of life? Or do we give ourselves space from that person for whatever time in order for us to heal? Or, because the forgiveness part is hard too. Just speaking from personal experience, it's very hard, especially if they're always there. Like I feel like for myself personally, I need to give myself space.
Yes, I think that is fine, as long as you're not harboring that bitterness. Again, the bitterness is about you letting go of that bitterness. It is not about forgetting the damage that has been done. You cannot forget the damage that has been done, and in that case, you do need boundaries. The whole point of not forgetting is that so you don't let it happen again. You don't let that person harm you in the same way again. There's a verse in Matthew, I believe it's Matthew 10:14, where Christ is talking about when you go into a place, you give your blessing. If not, the blessing will come back to you, and then you can even wipe the dust from your feet and walk away. And I think that verse is a really big verse on boundaries, that you've tried to do what you could. There's another section that talks about you go between you and that person and say how they've harmed that relationship. Then you take it to the elders of the church, the priests, the pastors, the clergy, I should say. And the priests may be able to help mediate that relationship. And then again, if that doesn't work, we wipe the dust off our feet and walk away. So it is not, but as long as you're not wishing ill on that person, as long as you're not, wishing something bad happens to them, then that would not be a Christian perspective. The Christian perspective is I forgive, I give my pain to Jesus. God's gonna help me deal with that pain. God will help that person work on their heart if that person's willing, and then you're gonna go live in peace. So that way it doesn't repeat the cycle. Questions back there?
So for the good of the whole, even though I already said this, so I have this one friend who has no social awareness kind of, doesn't say inappropriate stuff around me and my parents. So I am that type of person who can't just tell them the harsh truth about how like I can't be friends with them anymore. So like I need to like know like how to say that.
Good question. Yeah, it's hard to separate from people. If you feel a need to say something, then you can, just say something about that your values don't align with what is happening here. But at the same time, if somebody's saying things that are not edifying to you and not helpful to you, you shouldn't be around those things either, because again, iron has to sharpen iron. So if that person is not iron themselves, they cannot sharpen you, and they cannot sharpen, your family and your close friends and things like that. So it is okay to separate from people that are not harmful. It doesn't mean, again, like we were just saying a minute ago, that you wish ill upon them or, dislike them or something like that. You could pray for them from afar, but you can separate a little bit from that person if they're not building you up and building up your Christianity and your faith and things like that. Boundaries.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to make a comment about that, and then maybe you could kind of build off that too. But looking back, there's definitely been times in my life where I realized people didn't say things to me, and at the time I took it, maybe it was a relationship, and then it comes out, oh, you've been feeling this way for how many months, and you didn't bring it up, and you take it personally, and you're like, what is it about me that, I would always rather a direct, like, tell me how you're feeling and have the trust or the respect, at least, that if I react angrily or inappropriately, like, that's on me, but to not tell me how you feel because you're worried about my response, it makes it feel like, you're just kind of beating around the bush with the whole thing. So, I don't know, I think that helped me, was realizing that it's okay for people to not understand what you're trying to say, but it kind of does both parties a disservice when you don't speak your mind and you don't say things, because then you're just getting frustrated, and they're, it just kind of spirals and avalanches. And I think, I forget who said it earlier, but they were talking about like the wolf and the sheep, and like, why doesn't God just, I think that's a common thing we all struggle with, is why doesn't God, just like always protect the flock, like, why is it loving to let the sheep, and I think what's helped me is realizing that the most loving thing you can do for someone is to give them freedom, and to give them freedom to do things you disagree with, and there's times in my life where I, lived life a certain way, and then an extended period of time goes by, and then I realize, oh, this actually isn't very useful, maybe these type of relationships aren't very helpful or whatever, and then realizing, now that I have this knowledge, it's actually not very loving to turn around, even if my intentions are good, to turn around and say, oh, living your life like this is not going to get you anywhere, and like, even if your intentions are good and you're trying to help people, you kind of push them away, and you're also kind of taking away their right to make the same mistakes that I had to make to learn those lessons, So, yeah, I think that's just something maybe we all struggle with, is like knowing when do you put your foot down, when do you like cut a relationship off and distance yourself, when do you keep pursuing it, and I teach and train MMA and jiu-jitsu and boxing for a living, so I always prefer the direct approach. I forget who said it, but they said sometimes the most loving thing to do is to smack someone in the mouth, and maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I do think that, if you really care about somebody, sometimes it's just like, hey man, you're screwing up, and like, that's how I feel about it, and whatever you do with that, that's on you, that's fine, like, but this is who I am, and this is my truth, and I need to, speak that, and then just kind of have the self-assurance that however you react to that, that's on you.
Yeah, a therapist isn't going to smack anyone in the mouth, so we'll start with that. But yes, good point in that in giving people an understanding of what you're feeling and what's hurting you is important, because it can either help that relationship, or it can be a place that relationship may end if they're not willing to change. I'm not an advocate for anybody ghosting anyone or just leaving a relationship, because that really does hurt. And I've seen many people hurt from people just walking out of their life and disappearing without an explanation. So I'm never advocating for ghosting. But boundaries are important, and discussing what those boundaries are and why you're not happy with the relationship. You know, there is a gentle way to do that, or punching somebody in the mouth is another way. Not my way, but a way of saying something is not working in this relationship. I am an advocate for that, and to be, you know, open and honest about what's not working and why it's not working, and having an honest conversation is important. But then you come to a place and say, if, you know, that can be a fork in the road at that point. Is that person going to change? Or look at themselves a little bit deeper and make some changes? Great. If not, then that is the time maybe to step away. And the other thing I would recommend is also looking for patterns. Is this a season in this person's life, and maybe they're going through a struggle and this is why they're acting a little bit off? Or is this just how it is and they're not gonna change? If that's the case, then that is a time to walk away.
I'm gonna comment on the forgiveness piece. Something I found helpful when we pray the Our Father, we say like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. When we also look at the parable of the servant that owed 50,000, and then he was forgiven by his master, and then he went after his brother that he owed 50 denarii. Jesus always will look us like, if we don't forgive, we're not gonna be forgiven. Like, you know, the other part that I found helpful also, looking at the cross, Jesus himself, like, you know, he didn't do anything. He was innocent. As far as position, he was the King of Kings, God, like, you know, just the Almighty.
Yeah.
And just on the cross, like, you know, for doing nothing, just because of love. And also he said, forgive them because they don't know. Just trying to find an excuse for them, like the ignorance or negligence. So any of us, like, I know, like, I'm not trying to dilute or discount the amount or the magnitude of the wrong doing that is directly to a person, but also, like, we have to look at it this way. If we don't forgive, we're not going to be forgiven. That's the bottom line. It doesn't mean also that we let people walk all over us and become doormats. We need to, like, clarify our boundaries, and we also need to communicate it. Like, you know, what you did, it was wrong, and I'm not okay with it. Even just that will give, like, you know, a flag to the person. Hey, like, you know, just do not continue doing that. So.
Yeah, I agree. And the Father forgive them is an important part, because if you relate that to research, there is stages of change that we go through in order to change. And that first stage is a lack of awareness. So, and if they're unaware, if they are aware, would they really do what they're doing? That's up for debate. But it's very possible that they don't know what they're doing, right? And that's why they're being so difficult, and in Christ's case even got to the point of crucifixion. But then there's other stages that come out after that, where our awareness is around, and are they still treating us in that way? Again, it's a pattern. It's time to, you know, turn away from that relationship if it's not edifying or helpful or healthy. But yes, that first stage is definitely a stage of non-awareness. But yes, we should forgive, because at the end of the day, if we don't, we will be consumed with bitterness, and that doesn't help. It doesn't mean we're gonna forget. It's impossible to forget. Yes, but to let it go and give it to God, we're not gonna be consumed by bitterness, which is what the point of forgiveness is. Yeah.
So, when someone is moving abroad and the whole environment is changing, and the whole source of thoughts and everything is changing around him, you kind of changing to a whole new person. So you're kind of creating a whole new version of you. And there's a gap is being created between the old version of you and the new version of you. So how to deal with this gap when it comes to the people that are only used to you in your old version, and not being hypocrites, because sometimes it feels like to go back to that version of you, like putting on an old garment, to not come off as as that unacceptable new version of you to the old people that got used to you in the old one.
Yeah. Yeah, to tell them that you, deep down inside your core values may be the same, but you are changing because you are adapting to this new environment, which is resilience. Resilience is about flexibility and adaptability and learning about your new environment. All those things are important. So you're actually being resilient to kind of fit into your new environment. But it doesn't mean that you are, the core depth of who you are is not necessarily different. You're still a loving person or a kind person or a gentle person, whatever it is. And so those parts may still remain, but invite them to kind of learn more about who this new person is and to be patient as everything settles down. Both people need to be patient. You as you're learning about this new person that you are, and growth sometimes looks different. I mean, just for all of us in general, we don't look like the people we were when we were 16, 17, 20, right? 10, 20, 30 years down the line, you don't look the same as you did. You've grown, you've transformed, and that's a normal part of life and growth, is to look different and to be different. But your core values are gonna be pretty much the same in that sense of, like the values, integrity, those kinds of things will stay the same. So they have to be patient and you have to be patient. And invite them to see what the new person really looks like. They may be happy with that.
Maybe for next time or this time, I don't know, like how to work on self-image and self-esteem.
Yeah, that's a good one. And an important thing lifelong, I think. But at least, again, to go back to strengths, to kind of bring it back to that, looking at what your strengths actually are. That God gave me strengths that I need to use, and that doesn't mean I compete with other people or I, say that I'm like other people or this person's ahead of me and this person's behind me. We don't do that. We're not in a race. We're focused on our journey and our goals and our talents that God gave us and investing those talents, right? So not taking the 5 talents and saying, why does this person have 10 talents? Invest your 5 talents, work on your 5 talents, and that's the best way to kind of grow and move forward. If you have 10, invest your 10. If you have 1, invest your 1. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Question, if you could guide us how to be supportive when people around us are struggling. And I'll give a little bit of detail. There are some people who go through crisis, life crisis, dramatic things in their life, and they very easily go into depression. There is intervention, taking them to the hospital to prevent them from killing themselves. There are things like that. When they come out of that, the medical treatment, they're not necessarily able to help themselves get back on track right away. So as a friend, you recommend therapy, you recommend life coach, you recommend health changes, but at some point, if the person is not taking initiative to act and maybe follow the advice of their professionals, etc., at what point do you, kind of step back? Or are we supposed to, one of the things that I've heard from such a situation is, you're the only person that asks about me. Nobody else cares. And okay, fine, but how much do we support each other in that scenario, and how much do we just leave for their free will and their response to their professionals?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's important to maybe validate what their experiences, their stressors, listen and be present. But there is a time where if a person is not responding to the life raft that you're sending them, that you're gonna go down and get depressed as well, and we don't want that either. So it is important to maybe tell them, like you're saying, to go to professionals, that the professionals are there for a reason, to destigmatize that perspective. But it is in their free will to go or not go. Just like you go again to the doctor, they prescribe you a medicine, you can choose not to take it, even though they're telling you this is what will help and this is the cure. Some people will not take that advice, and they will continue to get sicker and sicker and sicker, right? So it's important to know where the limitation is, that I can be a friend, I can be a supporter, but not to the point where it pulls me down and drowns me too. And also not to the point that you're not seeking the professionals that can actually help and do this. And even when they go to the professionals, they have to listen to, the recommendations that they're making and the support that they're giving and those kinds of things, or else nothing improves. So that's a really important part as well. It's important to know where your limitations are. If you're starting to feel down, then you can say, I really want to support you and help you, but I will support you and help you, but you have to actually take these other steps as well, right? And not put yourself in a position where you're being pulled down along with them, which is important. So again, boundaries. It's gonna go back to boundaries.
Yeah, kind of back to the smack in the mouth. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that was like something I learned early on, and it was the mentality that like not everybody cares about you.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people out there that aren't going to be tolerant
Yeah.
about certain behaviors, and every coin has two sides to it. So it's good to be altruistic. It's good to be empathetic. It's good to be kind and helpful. But I think with certain people that kind of just don't get it in some ways, it can turn into, enabling and expecting that from everybody. And I think sometimes it's best to just like, not in a mean way, obviously, because you can't, even if it's not like disciplining like a child or a parent, but like in a friendly sense, like you can't react out of anger or whatever. But I think sometimes just like having a firm boundary and being like, hey, you come over here, you get smacked. Like that's it, and you do what you want with that, smack, okay, come over here again, smack. And then they learn pretty quickly like, okay, like maybe I need to be a little bit more socially aware of where people's boundaries are. And it wasn't just like something that person did. I actually had a guy that it's funny because through high school I didn't like this guy at all. And I saw him as very privileged. He crashed like 3 cars that his parents bought him, and he was a lot more well off financially than me. And I cut him off. I didn't really see him as a friend at all. And then it was funny, later in our 20s he came back and he was like, hey, you're actually the only person that like put your foot down with me and was like, I don't want to be friends with you because I just can't support how you're acting. And looking back, he saw me as like the only good friend he ever had through that whole period of his life. And it was kind of a realization for me, because I was like, wow, I really didn't even consider you a friend at all. I was just like, man, I can't tolerate this, but so I don't know. I didn't mean to say, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I said that earlier.
Yeah.
I wasn't advocating for violence with people necessarily.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I think that just helped me, is just like, it's just a wake-up call, and it's just like, I think being able to set an example and just say, here, this is how it is. I know Eddie was in the military, and that's kind of how things are. It's just like, not everybody cares about you, and they're gonna like sit down and talk through your feelings, which I think has merit. But I think sometimes, especially with men, maybe it's helpful to just know, like, here's a very clear boundary, and on the other side of that line, there's a wall that I'm just gonna keep bashing my head on until I go, oh, I'm not gonna cross over that line anymore.
Yeah, not advocating for enabling either. So I agree with that statement. And so again, knowing where the limitations are of how much you can help, point them in the right direction, and then let them go in that direction. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to ramble. I just, I am an MMA coach and a wrestling coach, and I think what I've found through personal experience is you can't just do one or the other. Like you kind of have to have the good cop, bad cop, the sweet and sour. You can't just be like, a hard-nosed guy that's gonna smack everybody around, but you also can't be a pushover and be too nice. So I guess for me, my approach that's worked is just, you come over here, you get smacked, but also I'm doing this, and like pick them up then and be like, I care about you, and like, I know that you're capable of this, like I believe in you, and I know you can do this, so like get with it, and like the option's always there, the water's always warm, kind of.
Perspective. Others?
All right. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you all for coming this weekend. It's a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, we can thank you enough for, yes, we look forward to the next time, God willing, inshallah.
Inshallah, for sure. God willing.
Let's pray. Name Father, Son, Holy Spirit, thank you, Lord, for blessing us, Lord, with Christine and this lovely, wonderful weekend. And bless her family, our service and her job, and bless us all, and ask you, Lord, for the sake of intercession of Saint Mary, Archangel Michael, Saint Monica, and Saint Augustine, and all the saints. Please hear us, Lord, as we pray to say, Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom,
power, and the glory forever.
Wow, Christina.
Hi everyone. Real quick,